I had tried to keep sex out of this talk, but you mentioned Alma Mahler. It was an extraordinary relationship. She met him as the successful composer of Es war einmal. I had an extraordinary personal experience. My dear friend David Pountney was directing an opera of Janacek at the Staatsoper in Vienna, and they put him into an apartment very close by in the Walfischgasse. And he invited me up for lunch. And I suddenly realized, to my absolute horror, that this was the apartment in which Zemlinsky had met Alma in February 1901. It was still recognizably the same place, because she drew a little diagram of it with a glass panel behind which there was a small smoking area, for instance. It was still all there. It had been done up very beautifully. But so she met at a social gathering. The apartment in those days belonged to a family called Konrad. Hugo Konrad, the father, was a very close friend of Brahms. He was a Hungarian Jew and actually produced the text for Brahms's Zigeunerlieder. If you've been to the exhibition of portraits at the National Gallery, you see that there's an Erika Konrad Tietze, portraited by Oskar Kokoschka, who was Hugo's eldest daughter. She also signifies in Alma's diaries. Anyway, not wanting to tell too long a story, Zemlinsky met Alma, and she was very interested by him, but the evening was given actually in honor of the Belgian painter Fernand Knopf, and the concentration was more on him. Nevertheless, at the end of the evening, Zemlinsky, who never failed to recognize a beautiful girl, said, "Why don't you bring me some of your compositions?" And she did that, and he destroyed them. He said, "You have no idea how to write for these are songs, voice and piano. He said, I must teach you everything." And finally, she gave in and started to take lessons with him. And he said, "You have to decide whether you want to go to parties and wear beautiful clothes, or whether you want to compose music. You won't have time for both." Anyway, one thing followed another. Alma soon noticed, although that Zemlinsky was reputedly ugly and evil-smelling, a heavy cigar smoker and so on, she fell for him, as many young ladies did in succeeding decades, up to the end of his life. She fell for him, and he fell for her. And then they started visiting concerts together. Then they sat in a performance of Tristan and Isolde together, conducted by Mahler, where apparently in the family box, sort of at the back of the family box, scenes followed that one would now describe as heavy petting. One thing led to another, and then Alma's parents, who were very much anti-Zemlinsky, in fact they were both fairly blatant anti-Semites, took Alma away to the Wolfgangsee for the summer holidays, and they were separated for several months. Nevertheless, when she returned to Vienna, this was September 1901, they continued where they'd left off, and with an exchange, shall we say, of bodily fluids and such things, but they actually never get any further than this exchange. And it went from one shall we say, climax to another, until in November 1901, she was introduced at a party to Mahler, who fell for her in a big way, and everything that her parents had said about Zemlinsky, that he was ugly, that he smelt bad, that he was poor, that he was no success as a composer, Mahler was quite the opposite. He was an elegant man. He was Jewish too, but that didn't seem to bother them so much. He had a good salary as chief conductor of the Hofoper. He was, shall we say, controversial as a composer, but nevertheless his work was being played everywhere. And although he was 20 years her senior and had never been married before, they married in February 1902, and that was the end of the wonderful relationship between Zemlinsky and Alma Mahler. The result of that, Zemlinsky was down in the dumps yet again. The result of that was the symphonic poem The Mermaid, the Die Sängerin, from which he, shall we say, celebrated that loss in a wonderful piece of, actually his most successful piece of orchestral music.